Hey there guys, what's up? It's Autobot Mike 18 here with another TV episode review. Guys, sorry this one is a little bit later because this episode aired on Sunday. It's now Thursday and I'm just reviewing the episode. But as you guys know, I was away last week, so I didn't get back home till Monday night, like around 5 in the afternoon. So I never watched the episode of this new episode of True Detective, is of course what I'm going to be reviewing. I didn't watch it when it aired Sunday night because that was the night I was getting ready to pack up and leave, and I just didn't get a chance to watch it. Nevertheless, since I've been home for a few days now, I just finally got a chance to catch up on the new episode of True Detective, and because I do episode reviews, I'm going to give you my thoughts on this episode. I was considering just skipping it and going on to the 5th episode, but I think there are a couple important things that happened in this episode, which is the 4th episode of the season, that I really don't think I can just skip it, especially with the way it ended. I have to talk about it. So with that said, guys, I'm going to be reviewing in this video True Detective Season 2 Episode 4. Title is Down Will Come. In my opinion, excellent title for this episode. And I don't think I'm going to go as in-depth, guys, because this episode has been out for a few days, and you guys basically know what happened, because I'm assuming most of you guys have seen it by now. I usually go in-depth on Sunday nights because the episode has just come out, and I want to discuss everything. The discussion's hot and going. But because it's been out for a couple days, I think you guys get the point. I'm going to try to just make this as brief as humanly possible. So yeah, and of course, guys, if you didn't know, spoilers. And of course, when Sunday rolls around, I'll be watching and reviewing the new episode of the show, episode 5, when it airs. So anyway, guys, with that said, again, as I've been doing with the last 3 episodes, I'll get into I'll get into the separate storylines of this episode in regards to our characters. And again, I'm going to break it down as follows. I'll get into Frank first, then I'll do Paul this time, and then I'll do Ray and Annie, because honestly, they do a lot of things together in the show. Granted, there's one big thing that happens to Annie and Ray is not present, and there's one thing that happens to Ray and Annie is not present in this episode, but for a majority, the two of them are really close on this case. That's why I just break into 2 of them, so I don't have to go into 2 other separate plots. So first off, I'll discuss what happened to Frank in tonight's episode, this past episode, episode 4. Here's my thing, and you guys know, I've kind of been going on and off with Frank, because there are things that I liked about him, and there are things I don't care about him as a character. And I think one of his best moments of this entire show so far was that moment where he sort of revealed how he sort of became who he is. Something that really toughened him up as a child was when his father locked him in that basement, and that is probably the best scene that Frank's been in. The best scene that Vince Vaughn's done. I really felt the emotion of that moment, and I really think he's had a few other good moments. Other than that, it's just him really worrying about his funds and trying to, as any gangster would, and trying to sort of get money back, before he just, crashes and loses everything, because he's desperate to find someone. And we get that his temper is just brewing, and he is trying his best to not explode. And you really see that in several of the meetings that he has in this past episode, where he's going around. Basically, his mission this whole episode is to look to past connections in order to get money. He still can't find who killed Caspere. The case is still open, and they don't have any leads at this point, so he's pretty desperate. So he's basically looking at past connections. He looks to 2 guys who own this bakery somewhere in Vinci, and wants them to somehow get drugs so he can sell them throughout his clubs, various clubs and nightclubs and whatnot. And that's basically what he's doing for this entire episode. He visits them in a bakery, and then he goes and sees another guy at a club to gain part of a partnership in this club. He sees another guy in an office, and he's doing that the entire episode, and it's just like that beat, that same beat over and over again. And I get it. I get where they're going with it. I like the opening scene of him in this episode where he's talking with his wife, and the two of them are just absolutely struggling to have a kid at this point. And I like his viewpoint on adopted children, because his wife Jordan brings up, let's just adopt a kid if we can't have one. I'm infertile. Why not? Let's adopt a kid. And I don't think he's a big fan of that at all. He made that point very clear. And that is one thing that's going to drive a wedge between them. The other thing is that is slowly starting to drive a wedge between that relationship that I think honestly needs to be developed a bit further, because, yeah, I get they're the husband and wife. She's the, sort of, not quiet, but reserved wife of this big shot gangster, but she takes charge when she needs to. We need to not only see more of her, Kelly Riley's character, but I don't really care for them as a couple. Like, I don't feel that couple, and I know because he's under pressure right now. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But that's Frank's mission this entire episode, and I think his whole storyline would have been a lot more engaging. Don't get me wrong, I like where they're bringing his character, because I think that's personally a good idea. I just think that I think they're intending it to be more darker and threatening than it actually is, and that's honestly my biggest problem with that whole plot point at this moment, because I'm just not feeling that intensity, and I don't know if it's the writing and specific some of the lines of dialogue that Frank has given. Don't get me wrong, he has one really good line in this episode when he goes to see Ray again at the same bar, the same spot they always go to. You're either your best self or your worst self, which was in one of the trailers, and I love that line. But he's given some other lines that I think should have been more threatening than they really were. For example, he's talking to the two gangsters in the bakery, and he ends by bringing the whole thing, talking about the whole cavity analogy. Not only does that not make sense to me, but after he says that, they look absolutely petrified, and I'm just like, okay, he just made a quip, not even a quip, just a statement about how he's never had a cavity. Why do I not find that threatening? And I don't know if part of it's Vince Vaughn's performance. I really think he's trying to give it his all. I think part of it is the screenplay, maybe, and I think that's probably a surprise to a lot of people, because I think a lot of people loved the first season so much because of Nick Pizzolatto's screenplay. Which was amazing, don't get me wrong. The dialogue between those characters are incredible, and I think it's solid here, but I think it's just, there are some lines that just aren't working, and it's not just this episode and Frank's storyline in particular in this episode. I've noticed that at least 3 other times throughout this second season. Notably, last episode, I think Ray's character had it as well. I think he was begging his wife, or 2 episodes ago, he was begging his wife to not take the kid or whatever, and they just have him say no 3 or 4 times. Not only was the delivery a little choppy there, and that's the only time I'll knock Colin Farrell, because Colin Farrell's great in the show, but it's just, why that many times? I think there's some lines of dialogue maybe could have been cut or improved upon, and it's a shame for Vince Vaughn, because I think he's trying here, and I think part of it is he's just not as menacing or threatening as the casting director had it in mind when they first cast him, and that's got to be a problem with Vince Vaughn. I'm trying to get into him. I'm trying to get into that character, but a part of me is just like, still, I said this when I reviewed the first episode, do we need this character? And I can understand why, but I'm still just not feeling it. And I'm just not on board with him yet. And I think that's ultimately what's bothering me. Now, let's switch gears to Paul, because I feel Paul's storyline is a lot more exciting and interesting. And they're finally doing something with that character. Meanwhile, Frank is just, I'm not seeing him go anywhere. I think this was Paul's, not turning point, because you could argue that was last week, possibly, because we got more hints last week's episode about what Paul's fears are, necessarily, what he's ashamed of, and I predicted that it involved homosexual men and being in being in not a relationship, but I don't want to say hooking up, because what happens in this episode wasn't just a straight up hookup, because he knows this guy. I want to say his sexual encounters with men, and that's really what's bothering him. And I predicted that was what's going on with him last week, because of his old friend and what his old friend had said to him at the end of the hockey game, and also just his comments in general about he threw in like 2 homophobic comments earlier in the season, and I think that's what made me say he's a closet homosexual, and he's a repressed homosexual. He doesn't want to emerge as this man who loves guys, who likes being with men. It's really hard for him, and you can see him struggling, even though you could tell like maybe he wants to try to be with women. He's just incredibly disappointed with himself. And that's what I predicted, and I think I was right, and I think everybody else saw this coming as well, because early on in the episode, he wakes up in bed all by himself, and he's in the apartment of that ex-military buddy, and the guy's just like hanging around, eating waffles, watching the basketball game. He's like, "Hey man, you want some?" And Paul's just like freaked the hell out. And I gotta give props to Taylor Kitsch in this episode, because I thought he did an amazing job, and this was the first episode where I actually just said, yeah, I give a shit about this character, because I'm not just sitting there and I'm saying, all right, he's a closet homosexual, he's trying not to come out, he doesn't want to go down that path anymore. Obviously he's been down it in his past. He was trying to move on with his girlfriend. That explains why she couldn't satisfy him sexually when she tried to give him oral sex in the first episode. Things make a lot more sense, and I really do like this backstory. I think it's fascinating that we have a highway patrol officer who is deep down is a homosexual man, even though he doesn't look it and he doesn't come off that way when he's with people. Especially when Annie saw him when they first started working together. She's like, "You're a total chick magnet. Everyone's going to be all over you. That's why I want you working the prostitution rig, to find out about this Caspere guy. So I really like where they went with that. I thought that was really genius. And to just see his reaction where he's in the taxi and you see that one single tear just going down his face, and he's just screaming on the street. He's getting winded by a buttload of reporters, and he hit one of his lowest low points in this episode, and you just feel for that character a lot, and I really, really bought into that. And right now, apart from Ray Velcoro, Colin Farrell's character, because I'm still trying to figure out where they're going with Annie's character. I think we're getting little hints, but I don't know. Apart from Ray Velcoro's character, I am the most intrigued to continue watching Taylor Kitsch as Paul. I think he did an amazing job. This episode alone was one of the best performances I've seen him give in a long time. And this is the guy who was in Battleship and X-Men Origins Wolverine. Not 2 great movies. So I think Taylor Kitsch, I think he was well cast for this episode. I thought he did a good job. I'm seeing him fitting into this character, and I'm really, really buying into it. I'm really pleased. And then the other really important thing that happens with him, and this I think was probably even more touching than the moment where he's crying in the taxi, is when he sees his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, and she reveals to him that she is pregnant. And he doesn't know how to react at first, and he's like basically asks her to marry him and says that he wants her to have this baby. He doesn't want her to abort it, because she's like, "Oh, I know you want me to abort it." The girl from the first 2 episodes. And I like this plot point a lot, because you can tell he is just so damn frustrated with himself. He's ashamed of what he is, what he just did with this guy. We all can assume that he slept with this guy, and he is just so upset about it and just so disgusted with himself. You could see the opening shot when he's sitting at the table with the coffee. Just his face just says it all, sells it for me. He is trying to steer away from that by asking this girl to, I can't remember her name, Emily I think it was, to have this baby and marry him, essentially. And I just love where they're going with that. I don't want to say anymore. I really want to see where they're going to go with that storyline. It's really fascinating to me, to be completely honest, because I did not see that coming. Watching the teaser, watching all that, I did not see that coming at all. I did not know that was the character Taylor Kitsch of all people was going to be. I didn't see it coming, and I gotta give props to the writers for that. Nick Pizzolatto. I'm giving props to that. I'm really impressed with that. And later on in the episode, apart from his big moment with Annie and Ray and the rest of the task force as they go on that raid, he discovers one of Ben Caspere's watches in a pawn shop. They trace it back to a prostitute and her pimp, and I'll tie into that in a little bit, right after I get into what happened with Annie and Ray in this episode. Ray, I don't think nothing serious happened. I think one of the bigger moments when he was on his own was the whole moment when he goes to see his son and gives his son his father's badge, which is in that protective crystal box, and goes away because he's about to go on the raid. And the other big scene was when he meets with Frank at the bar, and Frank is like, I want you to join, I want you to come on my side and basically quit the police force, quit being a detective. I want you to be on join with me, shack it up with me, work with me. I can trust you, I can rely on you, because they get the information about who this pimp is, and they get the prints on the watch, Caspere's watch that was at the pawn shop, and they find out that the pimp's fingerprints and her fingerprints, his one of his prostitutes was had possession of the watch. So they automatically, this pimp and this prostitute are the two new prime suspects in this murder case of Caspere. So that's the only other interesting solo Ray scene that had. I think Ray had one really good moment in this episode where he picks up Paul because someone stole his bike and the paparazzi bombarded him in his hotel, and he talks about his past experiences with a reporter, and he's like, one of the reporters said they'd rather be first and wrong than second and right. I think that line just beautifully sums up just what it is to be in the media, and I just love that so much. I had the biggest grin on my face when he said that, because it's so damn true. That's exactly how reporters are. They will literally do anything to get the news out there first, and 90% of the time it's possibly wrong. Or new details emerge, but they put the old shit out anyway just to get the story out there. And I love that line so much. And they're also worthy of mentioning. They're in the traffic jam, and he's like, "Let's get out of this monkey fuck." I love Colin Farrell on the show. He's great. So that, I think, that's really the only solo Colin Farrell moments that happened in this episode. I think and I want to get into Annie's big moment as well, and her confrontation with one of her superiors when she gets slammed with the sexual misconduct charge. The biggest moments with her and Ray in tonight's episode, apart from the raid, I think was them getting deeper into this case and sort of trying to get a lead, or they look into the mayor of this whole of Vinci. Mayor Chisani is his name. They investigate. She searched his house, I think last episode, without a warrant, along with Paul. And now they interrogate his daughter in this episode, and they start to learn that Caspere's psychiatrist, Dr. Pittler, I think is his name, had some sort of relationship with one of the Chisanis. I can't remember if it was the current Chisani or his father, Theo. And they all knew each other somehow, and it's all connected to Annie's father, Elliot. He's in charge of that spiritual, retreat place. The father's played by David Morse, and it's interesting to know that they all knew each other somehow. They're in the same photograph in the 80s, so I'm really curious to see where they're going to go. And a lot of people have been saying that the mayor looked like he was up to no good from the moment he first came into the show. Now it may look like the mayor and the psychiatrist or the therapist, Dr. Pittler, had something to do with Caspere's death. So they start to get on the lead there, and then they're also dealing with the fact that their car just got torched in the last episode, and they're they know that if things go south, the department heads are going to basically blame them if anything goes wrong, per se. with this case. Ray also watches out for Annie's back by telling her the mayor is gunning for her. As we remember in the last episode, he was not pleased with her searching his house without a warrant, and he said he would do basically anything to get back at her, and he's just really pissed off at her at this point. And eventually he's going to get his revenge in this episode. But that's, apart from Annie's solo moment, which I'm going to get into right now, I think those are the only big Ray and Annie moments. My only legitimate problem with them was that I feel that through the dialogue, things are just a little chunky and bloated. What I mean by that is they're just throwing so many possible suspects at us at this point. The pimp and the girl and the prostitute, Mayor Chasani and the pillar. And they kind of did the same thing in the first season of True Detective. They're investigating like multiple people. They go out to like this like ranch farm where there was like possible contamination or something going on. I think their storyline was not only very slow in this episode, but I thought it was just too chunky and bloated in my opinion. And I just feel they're like tracking so many leads. It's like hard to keep up with who certain characters are and whatnot, and that's honestly where some of my biggest problems lie with this episode. But one of the more intriguing moments of the episode, one of the bigger moments, and a lot of people were going all over Twitter over this, was when Annie gets charged with sexual misconduct for that guy she basically slept with, and apparently he was her subordinate, which is why she's getting slammed with a charge. And I love that comeback line she throws at her superior. She's basically like, they're all high-fiving him right now. And she's absolutely right, because if the tables were turned and it was a female subordinate, I think I kind of sided with the cop, because I think the same thing would happen regardless, maybe. Maybe not, though, because if the female cop complained, maybe, nothing would really happen of it. I just personally feel that if that were to ever happen, if someone feels they were being taken advantage of or whatever, that, they would bring it up and it would be real, But, they would actually complain about it. But I guess not. That's Annie's point in the episode. But it's interesting that now she's only allowed to work on the task force. She cannot work in her department. She's not allowed in the building of the Vinci Police Department. No, where is she stationed? She's State CID, I'm sorry. And that's really interesting. And then he also brings up that she has had gambling debt problems in the past. That I find real interesting. That was hinted on, I think, in like the second episode or something. And I'm really interested to see where her past is going. Someone left me a very interesting possibility of what her character actually is. That her character is actually somebody. I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to spoil it because I have a good feeling that this person actually might be right. But someone's got a good theory going on about who Annie really is as a person. And if you want to know what said theory is, if you didn't see it in the comments in one of my last reviews, let me know down below. I'll tell you what this person thinks of her. But that was just a really interesting moment because she stood up for herself even though she got burned in the end. It turns out she's been in different relationships, and the fact that she's decided to sleep with certain guys in this department, it came back to bite her in the ass. And obviously this sexual misconduct charge is bullshit. She didn't try to take advantage of him, but I mean, come on. Yes, she's higher in rank, but it's a guy, so in a way the whole thing is dumb. Yes, women can take advantage of men. It's not always men who take advantage of women in the bedroom, but I don't know, it's just, it sounds kind of ridiculous when you look at it, and that's why she's just, what's the word, just mind blown, essentially, because of how just shocked she is at the whole, how ridiculous everything is. So that was interesting as well. Another interesting point to bring up about Annie in tonight's episode. And that sucks. Now she only can work on this task force. So now, and apparently it's hinted that the mayor brought up the whole thing about her gambling debts because he's gunning for her to get her badge, and now he kind of won because she's just on the task force. So now when she solves this, she's suspended from her department. Now, obviously the highlight of tonight's episode, I know this is what everybody was talking about, was the shootout / the raid to try to take the pimp and arrest him. Obviously, we all saw it in the trailers, that moment when Rachel McAdams is at the head of all the police officers. You see Colin Farrell and Taylor Kitsch in the background. The moment I saw that shot in the trailers, I told myself that is going to be a pretty epic moment in season 2, and I was looking forward to it. And as soon as I saw them getting ready, I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And I don't think they disappointed. Now, this is the 4th episode of season 2. In the 4th episode of season 1, they had the 6-minute long tracking shot where Russ Cole raided the projects in Louisiana and had to fight his way out of there and not get caught by the police, which is quite possibly one of the greatest moments I've seen in a television show in a very long time, because I just watched that episode a couple weeks ago and I binged the whole first season. So when I saw it unfold, my mouth was dropped. Did this match up to that in any way? No. It's not nowhere near as exciting or nail-biting. There were a couple of really nail-biting moments in this shootout, though. We lost a lot of people, and I think that's what will put that tracking shot over the edge in regards to how serious the situation was. Because yes, that situation was severe. Lots of police were called. Russ Cole almost didn't make it out with his life. This resulted in the casualties of many police officers and, more importantly, civilians. A lot of them were killed in this episode, at the end of the episode. And it was great that they killed the pimp, but obviously, and I think we all knew this, he did not kill Caspere. The murder is still out there. We all know that. And the department, they're not going to be happy with Ray, Annie, and Paul, who are literally the last 3 cops alive, standing alive at the end of this episode, which is so fascinating. Not only were their reactions perfect, because you see Rachel McAdams and Colin Farrell, they're just out of breath. They're just like, what the hell did we just do? Look at this carnage and everything. And Taylor Kitsch is just like, puts his gun in his pocket and is just ready as the cops surround them. I love that so much because Taylor Kitsch has seen worse before. They're all like, I thought that was great. So that was awesome. But the shootout itself was hectic. It was frantic. It was tense. It did not match season 1's raid, but it was pretty damn exciting nevertheless. It resulted in some loss, and it had me biting my nails for sure. I really enjoyed it, and I think it sort of gave this episode some boost of energy, because I think the majority of the rest of the episode was kind of either slow or just lacking in some areas, apart from some solid moments. And I'm still waiting for things to just blow me out of the water like the first season did with episode 3. That's when I really started to get into it. And I was hoping that was going to be the same case for season 2. And while the shootout was amazing, I can't wait to see the aftermath. That's what's going to be even better than the shootout, is how these people, our 3 characters are going to deal with this now that all these people are dead. Their lead suspect is dead, and obviously they don't know if he did it or not because he's dead. So a lot of questions are open. This is probably the turning point of the season, and I love the shootout. I just wish the rest of the episode matched up to the levels of intensity that final 10 minutes brought, because I felt that Annie and Ray's moments were a little slow here or there, and I still am just not feeling Frank. I'm just not. He's not that threatening, and his threats, his own dialogue, just aren't all that working for me. And I want to see more. So those are my thoughts on this episode of True Detective. But the cinematography, the handheld style for the shootout was great. The directing was really solid. The actors, Taylor Kitsch was incredible. I'm still not going 9. I haven't given an episode a 9 yet of this season, but I'm gonna go 8.75 out of 10, or a B+. Take it or leave it, guys. What did you guys think of this episode? Let me know down below. And what do you think is going to happen on this upcoming episode for this coming Sunday night? Let me know down below as well. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, sorry for the delayed review. Nevertheless, I will see you in my next video, guys. Bye.